Hello Sales Nation, I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, and in this video, 5 of the world's leading negotiation and influence experts share their tips on how to win business and negotiate in the world of B2B selling.
I can remember a long time ago, I came across, one of the classic names in negotiation, Roger Dawson, and he had a program that I don't think has changed in the 40 years since it came out, called The Secrets of Power Negotiation. And it really was push the other side till they get upset. And he talked about one example where he was wearing down someone in a bargaining situation until finally the other person got mad and said, "I can't sell it to you for that. I'd lose money if I sold it to you for that." And he was like, "All right, awesome." I pushed you to your limit. You've gotten really upset. You've said no adamantly. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for an emotional, reactive no, where you really mean no. And then they say to themselves, "All right, awesome." Inside, they're like, "I now know I did my job. I got every last dime on the table. I got every clause that's going to kill you." And they besides price, there's a lot of clauses they want that you're not going to like. I sent an email to one of these people just 2 days ago, and I said, I have some real problems with this, and be happy to talk it through with you. And if there are 5 sentences. I said, go through each one of these with me line by line and let me know how they are. The reaction I got was they waited 2 days before responding, which means now shortly I know that pretty soon they're going to say, "Time is of the essence. We really want to get you paid. There's time here." Well, if there was time here, they wouldn't have waited two days to respond. They're using time as a weapon on me. This is a tactic. They're trying to push me really hard. And I said, "Look, I'm happy to talk about each one of these clauses." And the reaction was, "I'm really disappointed. We worked really hard. We've tried so hard for you. Everybody else has signed and had no problem. And it seems like after all this time and effort we put in, you have, and so this is one guilt trip after another, which interestingly enough doesn't respond to a single one of my concerns. I'm like, okay, all right, this is the tactic, and they had done some of this to us early on. Now, and I don't mind dealing with procurement negotiator because there's a deal to be had here. And it reminds me a lot of why I joined the suicide hotline in the first place, because I went there because I wanted to learn how to deal with difficult people.
There's something that my late mentor, a fellow named Warren Bennis, a big guru in leadership, taught me and directed me. And I would direct this towards every salesperson because many of them don't do a very good job of it. And what Warren said was, be a first-class noticer. Because when you notice things, it's different than seeing, watching, or looking, because then you're kind of an observer. But when you're a first-class noticer, you're absorbed in where the other person is, where they're coming from. So since this is a video interview, I'm noticing that you're writing this down. You might have actually written down, be a first-class noticer, because something about it tickled your fancy. So I'm kind of noticing that you took action, which means if you're taking action on something I'm saying, it means I'm in your head somewhere. But there's something that I talk about in my books, Just Listen and Talking to Crazy. And the most recent one, Talking to Crazy, is about how do you deal with irrational or impossible people. And the secret, or the key in Talking to Crazy, is you lean into their negativity, and instead of getting defensive about it, you actually, in this case, may articulate it for them. So something that I once did with a prospect, but I tend to be a little bit bold and verging on crazy if you ask my wife. I remember I was with this prospect, and the last thing he wanted to do was be there with me. And so I looked at him and I said, "Do me a favor." And he said, "What?" I said, "Cross your arms and look up at the ceiling." He said, "What?" I said, "Trust me on this. Cross your arms and look up at the ceiling." And so he went along with it. And even just that is breaking the usual dance. And he goes like this. And I said, "Great. Now you're in sync with what you're thinking." And you know something? I don't like being sold to either. And he laughed. And he laughed because what happened is I was able to bring out into the conversation the negativity that he was already feeling. And he laughed because instead of getting defensive, I was playful. We got it out in the open, and he kind of laughed with, "You got me." And then after that, I was able to say, given that we're here together, given that we're sort of stuck with each other, I can put you in touch with products and services or other resources that can help you with any challenge or situation that you might be facing now. And I love making introductions and referrals to other people.
So you're right. It is about finding a win-win. It is about being clear about your outcome. What's a win for you? Being absolutely clear about what's a win for you. And being ambitious about that, pushing your win as ambitiously as you can. And the clearer you know what is a win and what isn't a win for you, the stronger and the more robust you can be around your position without being aggressive and without upsetting the other party if you actually say, sorry, I can't work under those terms or whatever, or I can't agree to that. Because you need to really be clear about what you can do and what you can't do, and still be profitable if we're talking about in a commercial negotiation. And many people, some of the very good commercial negotiators will do this by spreadsheet. They will have very, very clear breakdown of what it is exactly that they're wanting and the costs of this. And the other party says, oh, can you throw in this? And they'll go, let me see. And they go, chunk, 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 chunk. Mm-hmm. Yes, they can. Or chunk, 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 chunk. No, they can't. But the spreadsheet will give them the answer. So because they've broken it down to that degree of detail, it enables them to have confidence in, yes, I can, or no, I can't. This kind of spreadsheet approach, open book approach, can lead in a couple of different ways. Firstly, you can start negotiating on scope. So rather than price. So they can say, you'll give them the breakdown and with a bottom line figure at the bottom of the right hand column, and they'll say, oh, that was more than we were expecting. If you didn't have that breakdown, you're into negotiation or on price. But if you've got that breakdown there in front of them, and they say, well, it's a little bit more than we expected, you can say, oh, okay, well, let's have a look where we can find some savings. But it's not around price. You're going to be reducing scope. You can say, well, we can remove this part of it, or we can put this to a junior member. A junior member can be doing this, or something like this. But you're negotiating around the scope rather than around your rate or your price or your margins. Then the other side of it also is, in terms of that open book and in terms of that degree of preparation, you know their figures and you ask them to put their figures into your spreadsheet. So you understand their business as well as they do. And when they're saying, oh, actually, you're a little bit more expensive than the guy next door, but you're thinking, yeah, well, I might be on my upfront cost, but I know I'm going to save you money over a 3-year time period or whatever. If you've got their figures, you can put that into the spreadsheet and show to them instantly how it's going to be worth their while going with you, even though perhaps you are a little bit more expensive.
Most people are now spending a lot of their time negotiating through email, and that's the big problem. And I understand why they're doing that, because it's easy, and we're in a very I want things done yesterday type of world. It might be a little lazy. It's also really high. It's also really easy to hide behind the computer screen, right? Not putting yourself out there. I talk about why we suck at negotiating, and especially in this country, in the United States, we have a problem with negotiating. We're usually not the best negotiators. Well, A, we don't know how to do it. Most of us don't have any formal education in it. And secondly, we're very preoccupied with what people will think of us in this country and not stepping on people's toes and what people liking us. We take it very personally. If someone lowballs us, we say, how dare they lowball? In other cultures and countries, people tend to see negotiation more as a game as opposed to something that's so personal. And it's also their practice. I say this, I lived in Cairo for a bit, and I remember my first night living in Cairo, I went out to do a little grocery shopping, and I went out to buy some beans and some rice and some potatoes, some produce, some fruit, and it took me 3 hours and 27 minutes to do grocery shopping because I had to negotiate over everything. Here, we have fixed pricing. You go to Albertsons, you go to a grocery store, you see a bag of almonds for $3.99. We never say, hey, today I'm going to offer Albertsons $1.27. Yep. So it's not something that's part of our culture. That gets us emailing, and we think emailing is effective, but it's not. Especially for a salesperson, when you're supposed to, salespeople often have the trouble, this idea of selling before you negotiate. So I've taught a lot of procurement, a lot of buyers, and the first thing I'll teach buyers is make the negotiation transactional. Don't allow your salesperson to sell. Get them negotiating before they sell. That's part of every buyer's playbook. Get them negotiating before they have a chance to sell. Get them talking numbers. Salespeople oftentimes will go into negotiation and they don't even get a chance to start selling their solution. They start discounting right away, right? So the problem with email, it's hard to sell your value. It's hard to sell your solution. It's hard to sell before you negotiate on an email because email keeps things very transactional. It's at a buyer's advantage to get you going through email because they can keep it all about price, 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 price.
Emotional intelligence, first of all, we make all of our decisions based on what we care about. You can go back and forth about that, is whether or not it's rational, whether or not it's logical. Ultimately, we decide based on what we care about. If you're willing to accept that, and it's hard not to accept it, then every decision is an emotional decision because what you care about is based on your emotions, based on your passions. So emotional intelligence is going to come into play in each and every decision. There's a lot of scientific data that sort of routes how our thoughts go through our brains. And they start in the caveman, the animal, the reptilian center, the amygdala, and then it bounces into the rest of the brain where we come up with rationalizations after the fact. There's some of that we'll take shortcuts into, we'll hack into just because we understand the process. There's certain things in a negotiation. It's a good idea for me to make you stop and think when I need to get you to change your mind. And there are other times when actually I'm going to say things very specifically that are designed for easy for you to process so you can come to a decision with less effort. So a lot of that is based on a context. What can I do in emotion and in negotiations to either lengthen or shorten the thought process? At the end of the day, a great negotiation is making a decision that sticks. My company and my philosophy, we preach yes is nothing without how. Well, what that means is you want to make deals that stick, that they don't back out of. Yes, all by itself, temporary hypnotic state induced that a decision that somebody's not going to stick to, that doesn't do you any good. So my philosophy comes from the very beginning is we have to make deals. A hostage negotiator has to make an agreement that the other side is going to stick to, because it's not like we can take them to court after the fact. People stick to deals that align with their belief systems. And that's why when you talk someone into something, you get a series of yeses, if you will, which is the worst way to negotiate possible. It's called mere agreement. And I say things to you, would you like to make more money? Would you like to go on vacations? Would you like to fly around on a jet airplane? And somehow I think they're getting you to say yes 3 times in a row to that. And I say, well, then give me $1 million. But the yesable agreement or the yes momentum or the mere agreement, that nonsense, that's exactly what it is. And what the problem with that is that it fails to align people with what they're doing, with what they believe in. And you can't make deals that stick if it doesn't line up with what their beliefs are.